study finds UFO witnesses may have personality traits that increase likelihood of sightings. Now, that's strange, right? I thought so. And it definitely goes back, reminding me of that conversation that Kelly and I were having when he was here in Vegas, him and Michelle. We were talking a little bit about the experiencer and, not just that, but how it looks in sort of the larger sense and why some people do see things, some people don't, and so the questions mount. But let's go to the study real quick and just look at part of this. So the findings here, again, this is from the debrief.org. The link will be in the description. I encourage you to look into this in full, read it in full if you're into these ideas, because like I said, great people doing great work out there, and the debrief has been doing this for quite some time now, at least a year, and doing some amazing stuff. So the findings, here we go. So Dr. Stubbings' experiment involved 206 participants, including 103 who said they had witnessed or self-reported seeing a UAP, which is unidentified anomalous phenomena. The team analyzed personality traits to see how participants naturally grouped together. The study consisted of 3 groups. Group 1 had average traits, whereas the second group, designated the neurotic as schizotypy group, weird, was high on neuroticism and schizotypy traits. The last control group, labeled OACE, was found to have high openness, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and extroversion, but low neuroticism and schizotypy traits. Okay, yeah, yay, bring it back to schizo, right? So here you go. So, quote, these were the groups that emerged out of the data analysis, Dr. Stubbings told the debrief. The latent profile analysis demonstrated these 3 patterns of personality profiles, which probably says something about the larger culture involved anyway, and where we're headed as a society and a human race on the planet. But anyway, so prior research looked at correlation and regression or predictive patterns, but not a latent underlying profile. And he says this was a new finding. So the study concluded that the third group, OACE, was more likely to see UAPs. Oh. Over the years, stigma and stereotypes have helped create narratives that people who see UAPs are more than likely emotionally reactive. In other words, they may display neurotic behavior and are prone to perceptual and cognitive abnormalities. All right. However, the recent data does not appear to support this narrative. Instead, Dr. Stubbings and his co-authors state in their paper that the descriptive UAP accounts by the general public were similar to the descriptions provided by military witnesses. Well, that's odd. Stubbings, when asked why people with high conscientiousness see UFOs, said it is difficult to answer such a question based on the current data in hand. And I'll read the last quote, and then we'll peel off of the article here. Our data indicates, quote, our data indicates there is a small statistical relationship, but further research should explore why that relationship exists. And he adds, but my guess is that people who are high in conscientiousness might be more willing to admit to themselves that they have seen something and believe it is the right thing to do to admit it. Oh, all right. So that's really, really fascinating in a lot of ways, of course, because we talk about this type of stuff that's what is it? I mean, all this stuff, like we talk about, blending our peas and carrots, our UFOs and our ghosts and our, orbs in the sky and things like this. And some people don't like to do that. Shout out there. You guys know who you are. That things are very specifically UFOs or very specifically paranormal or very specifically this or that, or, I get it. I get sort of the definition aspect of this and why people want to be so very specific when they're labeling these things. But we are talking about an unknown quantity, an unknown entity, an unknown phenomena, plural, at large, that might mean a lot of things. And so that's exactly the point. And look, we've talked about an unbelievable number of possibilities on this show. And it could be, psychic manifestations of fear, fear-based trauma. It could be all manner of things. Of course, people seeing things, all the normal things that you would expect, doctors and scientists to kind of point to as examples of what an experiencer would be seeing and being part of as maybe dare I say, some sort of disorder, okay? Or something to that effect, all right? But the point with me is it's not kind of writing things off specifically and directly as exactly that. I think it's quite a bit more complicated when you start to look at, again, the cultural basis for these things. And again, the folklore that we've talked about, the UFO folklore, the UFO propaganda as part of that aspect, which has been hot and heavy recently since that 2017 New York Times article with the Tic Tacs and, all the rest of the stuff, and the fighter pilots coming out and saying they've seen some of these things and it's weird and we don't know what they are, and on and on and on. And there's a whole bunch of this that kind of makes you scratch your head and go, okay, so what the hell is happening here? And that's the part that makes me wonder, well, yeah, what is this? And why is this happening? And why are some people more or less perceptible or more or less perceptible to actually, are predisposed to seeing these things? And so that is the underlying question tonight, and lots of theories, as always. And one of my favorites, by the way, is I think that go back to the UFO Tolpoid show when we did that one. And the underlying theory is that there is sort of a stress mechanism, a stress factor, sort of a psychic stress factor that culminates in, fear-based manifestations of things that we're seeing, whether they're directly, let's say, physical, or whether they're sort of hallucinatory in some sense, but they're manifesting as a source of fear and stress and this type of thing. And the world as we know it is very, very stressful these days. There's a lot of things that kind of fit into this. But as usual, you know me, I do agree that there's going to be some trickery of the mind here when we see these sorts of things and people experience these sorts of things. But I also don't like calling people liars or, accusing them of being frauds or any of the rest of that. I think it's, number one, bad manners, because you don't know what they've been through. And number two, who knows what they've actually specifically seen. And maybe they've seen something that is unbelievable, that even describing it to people would be the most embarrassing situation ever. And so there's the shame and the ridicule and all the rest of the stuff that goes along with it. But I don't know. As usual, looking for your theories on why this may be. And is it possible then that there is such a thing as a super experiencer? And again, back to the predisposition of actually identifying, seeing, feeling, tasting, dare we say, whatever it is, anomalous phenomena through a sixth sense or sixth extrasensory perception type of aspect. And that's what's on my mind tonight. I hope everybody's doing well. And let's get a quick break and get a word from our sponsor, which of course in this case is Human Inspiration. But think about it. There's a lot of different ways to consider this particular thing. And is there, and don't forget, there's going to be people that just like to tell tall tales. We always have those jokesters in our friend groups that are like, they're always trying to tell you nutty stuff to see if you believe it, right? That they're going to tell you a more and more wild tale over and over again, in different capacities and different times and whatnot to see if you'll believe them. There's always people like that too. So, you got to actually believe that people are fibbing as part of this, of course, as when you got to consider all the things. So all this stuff comes under the umbrella of the high strangeness and the super experiencer. And do you think people are predisposed to this? Now, the super experiencer. Now, of course, the most basic aspect of this is sort of a latent ability to sense these things, sort of maybe built into who we are, the thread of who we are, whether it's our DNA or whether it's, let's call it, what have we talked about recently? Our epigenetic factors of our ancestors, things like this, or, specifically just a heightened sensitivity in specific to maybe subtle energies. And so it would go like this, if you're describing this, right? Some individuals may possess an expanded range of perception, allowing them to detect frequencies and phenomena beyond standard human senses. And you hear a lot of this with psychics, and mediums and things like this, where they bring them into a space. It's supposed to be haunted, and they feel energy or they don't. And there's a I don't know. They are basically a tuning fork of sorts, or sort of a witching rod that's kind of feeling or sensing that energy in the space, whether it's a haunted place, a haunted campground, or a haunted house, or a room, or a haunted doll, psychometry, and things like this. And again, as usual, look, if you don't believe in this stuff, that's okay, because we have to do this, philosophical constructs. If you don't believe in this stuff, that's cool, because think about it, and think about the folklore involved and the mythology and how these stories go back thousands and thousands of years and are very similar. So even if you don't believe in the paranormal stuff, that's cool. Think about it in the psychological, or let's say the sense of anthropology and mythology and folklore, like I said. A lot of ways to consider this. And like I said, I just want to cover all the bases, and I'm not trying to smack any of this down. I'm just saying that there's so many ways to consider this, and you can look at it any way you want. That's how we do this show. But anyway, so back to this. So for humans, of course, UFO encounters, we'll go straight to the right up here because I did do it, so let's do it. UFO encounters stand out as threads of mystery, weaving patterns that challenge our understanding of reality. And that's another one, UFO abduction experiences. We'll get to that in a moment as well. But these experiences, often dismissed by mainstream science, persist in the collective consciousness, hinting at realities beyond our current comprehension. UFO experiencers report a wide range of phenomena, from distant lights performing impossible maneuvers to close encounters with craft of unknown origin. And of course, the alien abduction experience, which we've talked about, and we will talk about again tonight, because it is a very important part of this, because it's a terrifying notion for sure. Among these ideas, the phenomenon of glowing orbs holds a unique place, blurring the lines between the technology of, let's say, modern technology or even perceived extraterrestrial sort of craft, and of course the paranormal, as we always talk about, sort of blending our peas and carrots on this show, and throwing them in the blender and smashing puree and considering all the ideas together. But these particular luminous spheres, reported across cultures and throughout history, defy that easy categorization, as I'm saying there. So they move with apparent intelligence, respond to human thought, and often leave no physical trace of their presence. And this has been, again, reported for hundreds and even thousands of years if you go back into the annals of history. Some researchers posit that these orbs represent a form of consciousness itself, manifesting in our reality through mechanisms we've yet to understand. And that right there is the part that makes me go, okay, so if that's the case in any capacity whatsoever, then maybe it is a sort of communication in some aspect, okay? And that's one theory as we start and kind of get into these ideas. But the heightened sensitivity to it, to these subtle energies or whatever it is we're dealing with, is maybe built into us, or maybe built into some people, maybe not, okay? And which of course leads us to the idea of genetic predisposition, which is again activating these latent psychic abilities because of just who we are. So certain genetic markers or combinations could unlock dormant capacities in the brain, enhancing awareness of non-ordinary realities. And that means lots of things. It could mean consciousness. It could be who knows? These subtle energies we're talking about, I don't really know. I don't have the answers, but I do wonder what's a B. And then the chat says there's also the forensic science founded by Kit Green and Gary Nolan on the genetic neuronal anomaly. I didn't know anything about that. So let's take a look at that. Thank you, B. I'll add that to the show. Appreciate it very much. And so that's the deal, though. This is what we're talking about tonight. Is it possible that is a super experiencer? And that some people are more predisposed to sensing, seeing, experiencing anomalous phenomenon. And that could be all manner of things, whether it's paranormal, whether it's UFOs, lights in the sky, however you want to define these things. And even dare we say things like, finding creepy crawlies in the woods, like maybe seeing out of the corner of your eye a Bigfoot or a cryptid or things like this. Because, of course, you know me, blending the peas and carrots is what I do here, and all the ideas. But, where do you stand on this? Where do you stand in the spectrum of this conversation? Because, like I said, I don't like calling people liars, and I do want to take them at face value when they say they've seen these things. The history is too rich for me to just discount it entirely, which is why I'm here, by the way, talking about these ideas. And maybe there's something to it. And so, well, what is it? Is it possible there is such a thing as a super experiencer? Tonight we're taking your calls as we talk about something I'm calling the super experiencer. Is it possible that particular people, whether genetically predisposed or otherwise, are more prone to seeing and sensing anomalous phenomena? Now, a lot of ways to consider this, of course, and you could even break it up into different factions or sections in your mind, because some people see, lights in the sky and consider them UFOs or, alien craft, or however you want to define these things. I like to mix the ideas. Or you could split them and say, maybe you see these orbs in your house, and maybe these are ghosts, haunted residual energy type stuff. I don't really know. As usual, I always say, if I knew the answers, I would just show up and tell you the answers, and then the show would be over. I'd read off a list of answers. But I am not so narcissistic to believe that I know the mysteries of the universe. And so I will not do that. And I will not suggest that I do know anything about any of this stuff, other than, like I said, it's been in the zeitgeist for a very long time. And even an ancient zeitgeist was still considering these ideas a long time ago. And so is there something to it? And is it possible? All of these ideas, if you want to be part of the show,